I am Kenley Money. I'm the Director of Information Systems Architecture and the APCD Director at the Arkansas Center for Health Improvement. The Arkansas Center for Health Improvement is the administrator of the All-Payer Claims Database and the Healthcare Transparency Initiative. You'll see the logo for that in the lower left-hand part of the footers here. The team who will be helping me with today's presentation include Trang Zhang, who is our technical business analyst, and her role is to manage all of the carriers that submit data, all 50 of them. And she will be able to answer any submission questions. She has a great deal of resource behind her. Then there will be Nicole Sanders, Dr. Nicole Sanders, our Assistant Director of Analytics, and Mike Motley, our Director of Analytics at ACHI. I should, a little bit of housekeeping before we go on. You can, for the chat, you can submit your question in the chat box. There will be open mic at the end, of course, for any sort of, any other specific questions. This deck is going to be made available to you at the end of the session. You will receive an email with a survey, and it will have a link to the deck. Be sure to check out any blog posts on the ACHI website pertaining to the Healthcare Transparency Initiative or the APCD. And the next user group, if we don't schedule one beforehand, but the next regularly scheduled data user group is on April 28th, 2021. You can pencil that in now. You'll probably get a save the date email very soon. So today's agenda topics, I have 5 areas. They are, you can see, merge submitting entities, deciphering service provider names, Arkansas APCD county population source distribution, COVID-19 analytics, and the latest APCD release and data tips. So without any further ado, let's go to the first one. Kathy, next slide. Let's go to merged submitting entities. Thank you. So if you've had any experience with our APCD data or any type of health insurance claims data, or just observing health insurance in the environment, sometimes entities will merge. And they merge, there's some basic reasons why. Either there's an acquisition or an organizational change, or a TPA PBM relationship has been established. And for the uninitiated, forgive any repetition if you already know, a TPA stands for third-party administrator. And this is where organizations utilize a health insurance carrier to manage their medical claims. They don't do it themselves. For example, one of our most important sources is the Arkansas Employee Benefits Division, and that's the state's largest self-funded plan. They're the ones that provide health insurance for public school employees and state employees. And they don't manage the medical claims themselves. They use and have used in the past both Blue Cross and QualChoice. So Blue Cross and QualChoice are their third-party administrators. And then a PBM stands for Pharmacy Benefits Manager, and those are organizations or carriers can engage those types of entities that have experience specifically in pharmacy claims management. We all are aware of CVS Pharmacy. We know them as Caremark. They are an enormous PBM for many of our carriers. So as these merged submitters are made known, quite often they tell us this is happening, or we see it in the data. The Arkansas APCD team documents them and puts that information in the data tips section on our website. If you go to arkansasapcd.net, for those of you who have not yet, there's a big green button that says data tips. We will all encourage you throughout this presentation to visit the data tips section a lot, because there are many, many nuances about the data. But these merged submitters each have a specific data tip. But we're going to talk about them here because some of them have nuance that would be immediately helpful to you. Let's go to the next slide, Kathy. Okay, 6 submerged entity examples that I'm going to show. There'll be 2 slides per each, and one will be the description as you see here with some directions on how to deal with it. And then there'll be some examples because, in my opinion, a picture speaks 1,000 words. And I'm going to enlist Trang Zhang to help me here because all of our entities in the data are identified through these numbers. You see these 5 and 6 digit numbers, 79413D and 12567. But Trang deals with these carriers all the time, and she can provide the appropriate names. Like I believe 79413D is Cigna, no, United. She'll correct me, and it might just make it more relevant to you as we go through. So Trang, who are these 2? United and?
So 79413D, that's United Healthcare, Medicare, and Retirement. We just call them United D. And 12567 is Care Improvement, which is also under United Healthcare.
Okay. So these 2 entities merged, and you can see in the description here that the Care Improvement merged in with United D back in 2015. And so the claims from members previously covered by Care Improvement are now with United D. It's not just that they stopped submitting. It's not always that they just stop submitting and start submitting with the other carriers. Sometimes there's duplication across member information and the claims information. This one is pretty straightforward to find. And for those, well, let's look at the directions column here. So what we would advise a data user to do is to find all the United D member records related to Care Improvement, and you do so by grouping on the hash ID, which is the concatenated APCD unique ID and member gender. You can see the field names there, and we've talked about these in the past. And for those of you who are new to our data users group, there are links on our website to past decks that can help you understand what the hash ID is and how to use it. Happy to have a special class if need be. And once you group, then you can use the member ID to go mine the claims. Next slide, Kathy. So let's take a look here. If you can see my cursor, hopefully. The hash ID is the concatenated unique ID and gender. Usually we do it the other way, it doesn't matter. And then if you group them, you find everybody who has this same hash ID. You can tell these are the same people because they have the same date of birth. And you'll see there are the 2 carriers, 79413D or United D, and then 12567, which is Care Improvement. And they have different member numbers, same hash ID. But you're going to want to find the overlap. You're going to want to, if you're trying to build analyses that you need this person, you're going to want to try to find all the information about this person. So you would take the member number and go mine the claims, either medical or pharmacy, to get all of that information. This is the same type of methodology you would use if you're trying to find, when it's not a merge, you're trying to find all the medical claims and dental claims, for example, for a person. At UAMS, our dental carrier used to be Delta Dental. Now it's Blue Cross Blue Shield. Our medical insurance is by United. So you'd find my members in United, and then you'd have to go and look for the claims, find the member numbers and look for the claims for those other 2. It's a great way of building a cohesive group across carriers and also filtering through and understanding when a merge occurs. Let's go to the next one. So the previous one was an example of an acquisition. This one is an acquisition and a PBM example. And sometimes we are lucky enough that when a merge occurs, that there are consistent values or components or fields that we can look at to know when there's a merge. So let's look at the description and how to deal with it. So Trang, what's 90328?
So 90328 is First Health Life and Health Insurance Company. They used to be part of Aetna, and they were recently acquired by 10155, which is WellCare Prescription Insurance.
So, but there was not a merge with the Aetna. We don't have any merge with that, but, and yeah, so, and you can
Right.
also see that in 99CAR1, that is Caremark, AKA CVS. So the tip here is really about this entity and this entity, but you can see how this one plays when you look at the example. Well, Caremark's a very large PBM, and they service a lot more than these two entities. So they have particular data in their member records that can help us know that they merged with, or that they consumed this carrier's data. So if you look at the directions, select the Caremark members. This is the first thing you do. Select the Caremark members where the employer field name, MEO82, contains these values. And once you have that subset, then you can use that grouping methodology to go find the data for these other carriers. Kathy, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we grouped on our hash ID. Oh, first of all, we found that this is WellCare record. I'm sorry, this Caremark record was the one to look for. Then we grouped on the hash ID. We found WellCare and the, what was 90328 First Health. Yeah, my apologies, Train. Interestingly enough, when WellCare went over to Caremark, or they retained the member number, but this one did not. And so you'll need to mine the claims, the pharmacy claims, using the entity and the member number, and you'll know that they belong to this person. Cool. Let's go to the next one. So this one is an example of, I'm going to characterize it as an organization change. Train, who are these submitters?
So 67369A is Cigna Health and Life Insurance Company West. We just call them Cigna West or Cigna A. And 67369B is Cigna Health and Life Insurance Company East. We just call them Cigna East or Cigna B. And 67369 is just basically the consolidated entity that we name for these two entities.
Cigna contacted us and informed us that this merge, if you will, this organization change was going to happen. So we worked with them on how to code their data and invented this 67369 without the alpha that would capture the most recent data. So like the previous two, that you would group on the build and group on the hash ID and use the member number to get claims. The good news is that because it's all the same carrier, Cigna, the member IDs are consistent. So let's look at the next slide. And I only illustrated A here. It's the same for B, but you group and you can see the different member number. Well, the member numbers are the same and they're the same in the claims, even though, yeah, so even though this, the no medical claims for 67369A have been received yet. This is a very recent occurrence. Next slide. Okay. Train, who are these?
80799 is Celtic Insurance or Centene. 70998A is CrowdChoice Life and Health Insurance Company, and 95448A is CrowdChoice Health Plan or CrowdChoice Advantage.
Thanks. Sometimes Centene is also known as Ambetter. So Celtic 80799 has begun to purchase plans or acquire plans from QualChoice. And so they haven't finished this and they haven't ironed out their submission. So sometimes there's going to be duplicate submissions that we'll see the same member data and the same claims data from QualChoice and Centene. Until Celtic has completed its submission and these data are stabilized, it is recommended that Celtic member records found in these groups not be used. So here's what you do. You group by your hash ID, as we talked about, and then you eliminate the Celtic member records when this is in ME164A health plan Celtic insurance. This one was very nice and cut and dry. So let's go to the next slide and look at the examples. So in this case, this grouping here, it's still in the QualChoice data, and this one clearly is the match from a hash ID, has Celtic insurance. You would not use this member record yet. And the same examples hold down there. Now it could be possible, because Centene is one of the carriers for the Arkansas Works and qualified health plans. It's possible that there may be a legitimate Centene record here, but you wouldn't find this value in here. So, all right, I'm going to move on. Let's move on. We have two more. The next two are about TPA situations. So, Trang.
99 EBD1 is Employee Benefits Division, we just call them EBD, and 95442 is HMO Partners Inc. They are part of Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yeah. So EBD, we said in the very beginning about merge submitters, EBD does not manage its medical claim solution, and it engages other carriers to do that for them. And in this case, and more than one, in this case, it's the Blue Cross piece. So under the directions, it's advised that data users omit all member records from the Blue Cross entity where the value in the employer name begins with ASC or PSC. And remember, ASC stands for Arkansas State Employees and PSC stands for Public School Employees. Don't know if you'll ever need to use that, but context could be important. So what you'll do is you'll find your Blue Cross member records using our grouping, but you have to look for these two values, and then you would not use the Blue Cross member record. And our analytic team has developed this very handy regular expression to help you find that. Again, all of these are in the data tips, and you'll get this deck at the end, because I know you all want to do regular expressions. I'm joking. All right, so here's some examples. They grouped on hash ID. Clearly, this is the Blue Cross record and the EBD record, different member numbers, but it's the same person, and you would use the EBD member record instead of the Blue Cross record. You can see PSC, PSC, ASC. So the ones in green would be the ones that you would use. Next, last one, another EBD TPA situation, and I'll take this one, Trang. 95448 is a QualChoice entity. They have 3 different entities. And like the others, it's recommended that you use the EBD member record instead of the one provided by the TPA. Identifying this one is a little more complicated. So if you read here, you do your grouping, and then you would omit the one where it's the QualChoice entity code and ME032 equals AR benefits. But also, when you get to the claim level, you can group on the claim line information to see the duplicate claims and know which ones to eliminate. It is sometimes you want to do your analysis just at the claims level and not include member information. So this is an important tip. So let us look at the next examples. So here's the example where, it's 8.2, my apologies, equals AR benefits. And then here are member numbers, and You can see there, and then down in the claims, if you take a look here, these are the qual choice claims, and these are the EBD claims. And of course, the member numbers are not the same, but you can group on this claim number, these fields here, and you can see they are the same claims. And we would recommend you use the EBD claims and not the qual choice claims. Whew. That's a lot. They're all in the data tips. Happy to go through them at another time if you have any questions. Sometimes finding these, building the scenarios to manage merges, sometimes you just need to think out loud about it. So we're going to move to our next section. This is called Deciphering Service Provider Names. And I'll say, to find data user group topics, I'm not above creatively copying applicable topics from other state APCDs. And I discovered this topic when looking at the Massachusetts APCD data user group content. So, any of us who have used service provider names from the medical claims know that they can be very exciting and challenging. Provider names, individual and organization, either one, for medical services are captured in MC 030 and are related to the service provider in NPI and MC 026. This we know, it's on the claim. Sometimes the service provider name information does not seem logical, complete, or correct. Now, we have some methodology. This is what I plagiarized from Massachusetts. Data users can utilize this methodology to determine the validity of the service provider data. Next slide, please. So, I don't know how many of you have ever used the MPPS data, NPI data from the CMS website. It is, for all intents and purposes, the National Master NPI file. And it's free. You can acquire this file that's already scrubbed and put in relational format from several different vendors. We use one called CarePrecise. Our license does not allow us to sell or externalize the data. It's just for our use to validate data in our APCD. But absent that, you can download the NPI data from CMS, and which will be the first step to deciphering the service provider name. So when you download it, it's going to be a package. It'll have several tables in it. Then you can keep and use all the tables, of course, but the one you're looking for this solution is called Other Name Reference File. Now, this file name may vary slightly. Try as they might, whoever builds those packages each year, they don't always name them exactly the same, but other name reference is the idea. So when you download this file, you're going to select the records that match the NPIs in your claims, and you're going to see what the NPI file says the related organization name is. So let's go to the next slide and look at an example. So these are all ambulance services, and there's a reason why I'll tell you in a moment. The first column, these are real claims. I selected ambulance services with HCPC and CPT codes. The first column is the NPI. The second column is the service provider name as it shows up on the claim. And the third column is what's in the NPI file. And you can see there's a great deal of difference. Now, I selected some very, very ugly ones here. Quite often, the name in MC030 is reasonable and usable, but quite often it's not. So I wanted to show you. And it's pretty obvious that this file can be really helpful if you're trying to figure out what a service provider name is. Now, I chose ambulance services for a reason. I don't have a slide that describes what I'm about to do. Excuse me, drink of water, stand by. I don't have a slide that illustrates what I'm about to describe, but here goes. What I'm going to show is how similar data can differ in different states. In some states, like Massachusetts, many ambulance services are managed by fire departments operating under municipal government budgets. The organization names may instead reflect the city or the municipality. So in the value MCO30, it may not make sense without the additional MPI data. When I found this, when I was looking at the Massachusetts Data User Group deck, I thought, wow, how helpful would that be to us? I just knew it ran rampant in our data. So I mined our data top to bottom, and I only found one example, City of Rogers, and you can see it's the second line there. In Massachusetts, this is the norm and not the exception. There are hundreds and hundreds of municipalities that do this. And I'm not even sure that the City of Rogers, well, it looks like it does that based on the MPI file, but. So I say all that to say this, it is if your projects take you across states using APCD data, medical claims data, it's a good reminder and lesson to know that different states do different things. And work closely with that state's APCD group to understand what the data is. So that's our little added bonus for today. So, okay, so let's go to the next slide. The next section, I'm going a little fast, but I want to save time for questions at the end. The next section, Arkansas APCD County Population Source Distribution. We are often asked how the member to carry-out ratio is within our APCD and how it relates to state population. In other words, how much of the APCD represents commercial, Medicaid, et cetera, is the entire state population represented? That type of information, of course, can be critical to any analytic project requiring, can be critical to any analytic project. But here in Arkansas, you can't use the APCD alone to answer the question. Because you can see here, as it states, the APCD contains health insurance claims from fully insured plans, Arkansas Medicaid, Medicare, EBD, but it does not contain health insurance claims for private self-insured plans, small plans with fewer than 2,000, and uninsured. So that leaves a gap. So in your analytic project, how do you quantify the gap? How do you describe the gap? Well, our team has created a statewide and county population distribution table that can help you. And I'm going to turn this over now to Nicole Sanders, who is going to talk about the next slide, Kathy, which is the state level, and then give us some insight and show us an example of some county level populations. Nicole, are you ready?
Yes, sorry, had the mute issue. Okay, so one of our objectives for this particular study was, as Kinley said, really to get an idea of how many people in Arkansas we don't actually see in the APCD. In the past, we've used the rough estimate of about 15 to 20% of individuals in the state aren't in the APCD, which varies depending on the year, of course. And those numbers are based on the number of individuals in the private entity self-funded plans from ARC, which is about 8.5%, and an estimate of the rate of uninsured individuals from the Census Bureau, which is about 11.8%. But these are, like I said, a very rough estimate, and it doesn't give us any insight into the numbers we might see within the county. However, now that we've essentially finalized our collision reduction methodology, as we've discussed in previous user group meetings, we finally felt we were at a point that we could determine a very close approximation of the number of individuals that we don't see, and the number of individuals, the distinct number of individuals that we do see in the APCD. So just as a reminder, we developed the collision reduction methodology because we run into the issue, like Kinley was describing, not just with merge submitters, but in general, of hash IDs having multiple member IDs. And that could be because, like Kinley said, they're merged entities, or maybe it's a single individual with multiple plans. Maybe they're different individuals. But that makes it very difficult to get a good approximation of individuals if you were only to count unique hash IDs. So this chart, I'm showing that after we applied our collision reduction methodology, which started with extracting records from only December 2019, and then by separating them into the top 7 categories here, Medicare Advantage, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. We subtracted the total of those individuals we identified in the 7 categories from the ACS estimate, which is just over 3 million people in Arkansas. And that gave us the rate of individuals with either unknown coverage or uninsured, which you can see is 20% statewide. So we're saying that we don't see about 20% of the people in the state of Arkansas in the APCD. And then I also divided these individuals into the county of residence based on their member record. And I'm going to describe how I was able to make each of these groups mutually exclusive while we talk about the county rates. And yes, Kathy, can you go ahead and let me share that screen, share my county rate? Okay.
I think you should be able to do that now.
Yes, I am working on getting it there. Okay, can you see my Excel file?
Yes.
Yay, okay. So, let's see, I'm gonna scroll down. Okay, so we plan on making this available to you guys very soon. Definitely by the next data, the subscriptions are sent out. And I want to again reiterate or say that these numbers are likely to change because they're still approximations, and of course, because it'll be a new build, they'll change anyway. So what we will give you is the counties for this particular sheet. We have the 2019 population estimates. And you can see that we had about 3 million people in Arkansas. We determined Medicare fee-for-service by using the Medicare Benny summary table, which we provide, I think, to everybody. But anyway, it's part of the subscription. This group of individuals does not include Medicare Advantage individuals because we wanted to be able to be sure we were close to the correct number of individuals, and we could compare these totals to what CMS reports. So we have Medicare, and this also includes only those aged individuals either with or without end-stage renal disease. It also does not include any dual eligible members. And we have Medicare Advantage. This group are any of the individuals with an insurance type product code, which is, I believe, ME003, that indicates a Medicare Advantage plan. And of course, Arkansas Works. Those are easy to identify because they should have a HIOS ID ending in 32 or 36. We have EBD, which is also easy to identify if you use ME001 and choose EBD, the submitting entity. And from this group, because we have people who have yet to retire in EBD, or I believe they have retiree parts of plans, they can be on Medicare and on EBD. So I've excluded anybody who had Medicare from this group of people. And then we have commercial medical coverage. And this is essentially everybody that was not included in Arkansas Works, EBD, or Medicare Advantage, because all of those are considered, in the broad scheme of things, commercial types of plans. So that'll include just good old-fashioned Blue Cross Blue Shield. It actually includes UMR, our coverage for UAMS, or University of Arkansas, as an example. So, and then finally, for medical coverage, we have Medicaid. And from Medicaid, you have to exclude everybody that you've identified in Arkansas Works. Because again, you'll have member IDs in both. Because anybody who is in Arkansas Works, just like anybody who is in Medicare Advantage, has a Medicaid ID or a Medicare ID. All right. So to get an idea of the number of individuals in Arkansas that we have in the APCD, I just summed all of those types of coverage. And we see that we have about 68%, 69% of the individuals in Arkansas with medical coverage in the APCD. Okay. So another thing we looked at to get an approximation of our people who are probably on private entity self-funded payers or entities was to look at those individuals that only have dental and maybe pharmacy, but no medical coverage as far as we can tell. So essentially, we take anybody with the ME003, which is the insurance type product code, anybody that has dental there, and we have anybody with Caremark or Med Impact, any of those member IDs, member records, and we drop anybody with a hash ID and gender that we've identified in the medical coverage. And so using that methodology, we get about 330,000 people, which is 11.1% of the population of Arkansas that we are we don't have in the APCD medical coverage. And if you remember, I said that that ARC has an estimate of about 8.6, I think, %. So we are pretty comfortable with this number because this is again just a way to get an idea of how close we might, or approximation of people who are self-funded. And then we also have summed all of this information together to get a distinct count of individuals in the APCD, regardless of if they have medical coverage or not, in this whole state. And that we found to be almost 80%, 78%. We've included the Census Bureau percent of uninsured as a reference number, but I don't think it would be appropriate to add these two numbers together. I think one more thing I'd like to show you that I find interesting and a little bit comforting is that if you look at the groups with the highest rate of population identified in the APCD, there's not that many where if we added the two together, this rate and the percent of uninsured, that go over 100%. I mean, out of 75 counties, there's maybe 10. And also another interesting county is Washington County, which, you know, that's where Walmart is. And we see one of the lowest rates of people in the APCD in Washington County. So as I said, if you guys have any questions, we can talk at the end, or you guys can just let us know, and we will make this available to you guys pretty soon, if not by the time the next subscription comes out.
Thanks, Nicole.
Yep.
While you turn the presentation back over to Kathy, for those of you who are unaware of our data request process, Nicole mentioned subscriptions a couple of times. We have several ways to provide data, individual data requests, or a subscription that has multi-use privileges. There is a subscription available for UAMS and other UA system schools that are part of the Biosciences Institute. So these subscriptions get refreshed with every build, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Great job, Nicole. I really appreciate it. So Kathy, let's go to the next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Motley, our Director of Analytics. We've been doing a lot of cool COVID analytics, if such a thing can be cool.
Hey, everybody. I just want to confirm you can hear me first.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kinley. Yeah, I just want to switch gears a little bit, make everyone aware of some of the work we're doing around COVID-19 impact in the state. Since the early part of 2020, we have provided what we've called analytic surge capacity support to the Arkansas Department of Health. We've also worked in partnership with the Department of Education to some extent. But you can see here, this is kind of our COVID landing page. On a weekly basis, we receive data from the Department of Health. We receive a file that includes information around all of the positive cases. We receive a separate file that includes all of the test information, positive or negative. And we're able to do several different analytic components with that we've built into a dashboard that we update weekly. I would encourage everybody to go to our site, look at what we've done around COVID-19, which obviously is dominating every healthcare headline in the world these days, hopefully not for too much longer. But if you go to the next slide, Kathy, this is just one of the components. This is new known infections by school district. This is the 14-day rate per 10,000 residents of each school district. We report at the school district level, the zip code level, and the community level, which we define communities as a group of zip codes around a city. The school district level analyses is based on a geocoding process with a file from the Department of Education. This is really supplemental to the things that the Department of Health are putting out. They're reporting things at the county level. We're kind of adding to that and enabling some trending information that some local stakeholders have been able to use. I think when we started down this path, the maps and things and the rates were much lower. The maps were a lot greener, and now unfortunately they're turning or have been much redder, and even some in our purple zone, the highest zone, which is 100 or more new cases over the past 2 weeks per 10,000 residents. So this is one of the looks we've done using data from the Department of Health and some different geo files. The link there is to our site. I think there's definitely an opportunity to link these data sources with claims data as it becomes mature through the COVID era, through first half of 2020, second half of 2020. We've already started doing some of that for the state and public school plans, the employee benefits division, where we're able to go into the claims and look at costs for testing, related assessments, emergency department or outpatient visits, hospitalizations, you know, ventilator usage, things of that nature. So certainly more opportunity. And then of course, longer term research projects could benefit from a linkage of this data and claims data. So we just wanted to touch on this. There's a lot more on our site and we don't want to, we could take up the whole meeting talking about it, but please just go there. If you have any feedback about that or any of this, we'd love to hear it. So I will pause there for any questions.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going
Thank
to
you.
move on. We'll have question time at the end as needed. So this is our last topic today, latest APCD release information and data tips. Next slide, please, Kathy. So our next all-payer claims database update will be completed in February and available for data requests. Right now, our data goes through December of 2019. And by the end of February, our new base will be up and it'll go through June 30, 2020. We go basically in 6-month increments. That seems to be the best time cutoff for analytic projects. And for those of you who are new to our data request process, you can go to our website, arkansasapcd.net, and look through the process and the documents and the steps, or reach out to one of us and we'll be happy to take you through it directly. So with each build, we'll publish a release notes document. It's not ready because the build's not ready. And in this document, you'll see overall coverage dates. Most of our carriers, for example, began their first claim date was January 1st, 2013, but some started in 14, some started in 19, but there'll be a list of all of that so you will know what data to expect. There'll be some source-specific release notes if we have problematic submitting entities. And for this next one, we will have the inclusion of previously omitted submitters. So for those of you who are working with the data now or who were at our last data users group, or maybe the last couple, we've had some submitters that had significant trouble with data quality, and it was so bad, in fact, that we omitted them from the databases that we released. But all of them except for one have resolved their issues in large part thanks to Trang and our senior technical business analyst, Jenny Ingram, for working with these submitters to clear up and correct the issues, and they have resubmitted. I say all that, let's go to the next slide, because the biggest hitter here, the biggest gap was Humana. Humana represents a lot of covered lives in Arkansas, and they have finally resubmitted everything. You can see here what we're talking about. So as those of you who do work with one of our APCD subscriptions, you will get all of these data with the next delivery in, I don't know, 6 weeks, 2 months, whenever it's scheduled. Those of you who are new, well, you don't have to worry about the old data, but you will certainly have a more robust member count and claims count because Humana is finally here. Whew, it took a long time for them to work through their issues. And they submitted at least 2 new entities in their overall group. So we were able to add new entities to this. I think I said, I think there's just one remaining submitting entity, and Trang can correct me, that still is problematic that we will not include, but it's a dental entity and it's not terribly big. Trang, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's go to the next slide. As we've mentioned throughout, do visit our data tips page. You go to the website, it's a big green button. Also, our data dictionaries, you can pull down this deck and use these. These are live links. The data dictionaries are online where you can review all the data elements that are available to you. And we keep these updated as much as possible. I have some featured tips here, but we only have a couple of minutes, and I want to, let's go to the next slide. Our deck will always have, don't forget, look at your tips. Next slide, please. Let's go down one more slide and then we can come back. Oh, so if you have any questions for us, you can use this link to reach us. This is our service desk-like system. But if you know us, you can look us up in the directory and reach us that way. One more, Kathy. And this is our call to action. Again, at the end of this, by the end of today, you will have received an email with a survey. Please, 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 please complete the survey. We get our feedback and our topic selections from the feedback we get on our survey, and we want to know where we can improve. Again, I'll reiterate for all of those on the call who are new and you need a APCD 101, reach out, let's work on that. We have that all ready to go. Our next data users group is April 28th, 2021. Now then, it is 12:59. This program ends at 1. However, if you have questions, Trang, Nicole, Mike, and I can stay on for a couple of minutes and answer any questions that you may have. So that said, does anybody have any questions? And thank you for that, Karen.
Hi, I had a question.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm a PhD student in the pharmaceutical evaluation and policy program. So yeah, so when I have worked in a like couple of projects using the Arkansas APCD, and
Yes.
so like I have noticed that, like a few things. So usually I start with say the medical claims file where I identify like the member submitted like combination who have had like some procedures, and then I basically merge that to member files and kind of get their enrollment information. But I have noticed like not all of the submitter members from medical claims find a match in the member file. Like for instance, like if I identify say 10,000 people having some diagnosis or procedure from medical claims, and then I try to merge the member file, either the main member or the member EBD, I usually find like say 9,000 of them have match 9,500. I usually lose some people who don't have like they don't find like any match like those member and submitter in the member files. So I was curious why something like that could happen. Basically, like there are those members and submitter in the medical claims, but like I cannot find them at all in any of the member files.
Okay, so I'm going to restate what I think I hear the question to be. You have seen instances where you have medical claims and probably pharmacy claims without a
Yes.
corresponding member.
Yes.
And then vice versa, probably.
Yes, I mean I can understand the vice versa.
Okay.
If like they didn't have any visit or didn't fill any like prescriptions, for instance. But like why something like that could show up, like where there are claims but there is no information for those member IDs in the member file.
So that is a great question, and I can say that many, probably all of this, well, health insurance claims are vehicles for payment, and they're managed in large IT infrastructure. And sometimes carriers, they like for an acquisition, or they have a technology change, or data ages off, sometimes their files end up with these orphans, if you will. And the requirement for the APCD is to send members and claims in pharmacy for the time periods, and they should have matching, but sometimes they don't, and there's simply nothing that the carrier can do about it. But like you've found, they're not a lot overall. When you have 500 million medical claim rows, they're not a lot, but it does happen. It does happen. I'm not sure I have a data tip that really explains that. I think we'll add that.
Kenley, I can add to that.
Okay.
Yes. Like Kenley said, right now we do not have a data tip for that, but we will have some I have noticed certain submitting entities, for example, the way that they could construct their member ID is using the subscriber ID, and then they add the person code. Like, so for example, A is the subscriber ID, and then 01 for the, you know, the member, and then 02 for the spouse, something like that. So what I have noticed is that there are submitting entities who, for the medical claim system, they would add A1. So, you know, subscriber ID and then 1 for person code. But in the members eligibility system, it would be A01. So there would be a adding 0 in front of the 1. So that might be one of the reasons why you can't find the matching member record. So we don't have any data tip right now, but we will add some in at, what do you call it, workarounds for those. And so just once we have those in, you know, check back to the data tip, and it might solve some of that problem.
Yeah, thank you, Trang. There's many reasons for that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was making sure that wasn't an error on my part or something.
I appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions? Well, no, if you think of a question later, again, reach out to us, and this deck will be available almost immediately on our website. And there will be a link to it in the survey that you will receive in your email. And again, please complete the survey, good or bad. We appreciate the input. And that said, I am going to close and thank you all very much. Hope to see you in April.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.